Good morning. It's 9:15 at KRDO News Radio. Welcome back to The Extra. I'm Renee Roberts, and I'm very excited actually today to talk with Catherine Hammond. First time we've talked, we've already been talking a lot off air. Founder of Hammond Law Group. You focus, Catherine, so let's give people a little bit of background if they've never heard you before on The Extra or on KRDO. You specialize in estate law.
Yes,
all that
we do is related to estate planning and then what happens after people pass away. So the kinds of documents that people typically come to us for are wills and trusts and medical directives and things that will help in the event of disability and at the time of death.
And I don't know if you've shared this story before and would love to talk about it because I actually think that more people go through this than others actually imagine. The story of how you got into this type of law.
Right. Dementia is a growing problem in our country.
Significantly, yes.
And millions and millions of people are dealing with this themselves, which means their families, they have a number of loved ones who are all impacted by their disability. And it hit my family early. I was 12 years old when my mom cut an article out of the Denver Post and handed it to me and said, I think I have this. Oh. And of course, being the sassy 12-year-old that I was, I thought she was just crazy. Of course, she didn't have this weird thing in the newspaper. And when I was in college, she was put on disability from her job as a special ed teacher. And then at 22, she was unable to take care of herself in her home anymore, and I had to put her into a nursing home. But in order to get her there, I had to go through the messy legal process that we call living probate. I hired a lawyer and dragged her down to court and had her publicly declared incompetent, and then had to ask for permission for every little thing.
And at 22 years old, I mean, honestly, at any age, it is such a startling thing to go through when you're like, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to talk to? But at 22 years old, I can't even imagine having to deal with the courts and get everything in order to help just provide the right care for your mom.
Right. It was very, very overwhelming. And that was my inspiration for going to law school so that I could help other people walk through the legal process in the event of disability and when a family member passes away. And it actually wasn't until after law school that I discovered there are tools and techniques that we can use to keep our families out of the legal system at those key times when there's a lot of family crisis going on already. It's optional to go through the legal process. And a lot of people would like to know how to have a plan in place that will keep things within the family and free them up to grieve and deal with the family things versus the court process that often promotes disharmony.
Yes.
As we all see.
And you and I were talking, and not a lot of people know this, but when my folks passed, it was a very difficult time, of course. And then there was some wording in the will that landed us in court for a couple of years just because of a couple of things. So people need to be prepared and ready. And like you said, the discord it causes within the family. It's a lot. So estate planning is not something really that you should put in the back of your mind. When should people start thinking about estate planning?
Well, the first time that you need to start thinking about estate planning, surprisingly, is when you turn 18. And it's not that you need necessarily a will or a trust or something like that. Estate planning is actually a really big area just related to the kinds of documents that we need to have in place and the kinds of plans that we need to have in place for the events that might happen to us. Disability, either temporary or permanent, or death. And those things, of course, can happen no matter how old we are. And so when you turn 18, one of the things that happens is the HIPAA laws that protect our privacy around our medical information, they come into play when we turn 18. I have so many parents of young adult children who've personally told me their stories when their child gets into an accident and lands in the hospital, and mom calls the hospital to find out if her son is okay or not, and the hospital says, we can't even tell you if he's here or not.
Wow.
It's really, really distressing. So at 18, you at least need a universal HIPAA release that says it's okay for my parents and maybe my siblings to get my basic medical information.
And you don't think about that every day. I'm sure, like you said, parents come in and go, I'm just calling about my kid, and they're like, can't talk to you about it. That's
Exactly.
startling.
Right. So that's a really simple issue to fix at age 18. The next time that I think we really need to be thinking, and it doesn't hurt to have the disability documents, a financial power of attorney, and maybe medical directives.
I was going to ask you about that, like the power of attorney and the living. It's called a living will, right? Is that the medical directive?
Yes, advanced medical directive. So, and there's a healthcare power of attorney where you can name somebody to make your medical decisions, and then the advanced directive that typically says how you feel about artificial life support is the key thing in there. Those documents are helpful starting at age 18. The time that I would say you really ought to be addressing this, it's more of a responsibility, is if you own a home and or if you have children. I think it's a smart thing to start thinking through even before those things happen. But once you own a home, if you die, the home is going to have to go through probate at some point.
And that's what I was going to ask. If you're a single homeowner and something happens to you and you don't have anything in place, or even if you are a married couple, nothing's in place, like you said, the home will go into probate.
Absolutely. And married couples typically own their homes in joint tenancy. And that's an important thing to point out. A lot of people think that because both of their names are on their house, on the deed, that they own it in joint tenancy, and if one of them dies, the other one will be able to just take ownership of the house.
Right.
That's not the case. In Colorado, that's not the default. That language has to specifically be on the deed to your house as joint tenants, or maybe joint tenants with right of survivorship. And if that language isn't on there, we just had somebody come in last week who discovered after wife passed away that they're going to have to do a probate.
Oh, no.
And husband is still living. It's a really unnecessary court process that we hate to have happen. Talking to an estate planning attorney, you can make sure that even the deed to your home is set up in a way that you won't have to go through a court process when something happens.
And like we were talking about, it seems like a lot of times, people just automatically assume, like you said, married couple, well, the house would automatically come to me. No. And we're talking funds. We're talking retirement funds, stuff like that, 401ks, all that stuff, insurance money. There could be some problems if you don't sort this out ahead of time, correct?
Right. And it often, as you said, Renee, it can come down to just a couple of words.
Couple of words can send it into the stratosphere, like I've experienced. Yeah.
I had somebody come in at one point who her husband had a diagnosis that she knew was going to take him down a path of disability. And so she had gone online to get a financial power of attorney so that when he became disabled, she would be able to take care of things. And she did it all online. It all seems good. It says the right words at the top of the document. She didn't understand the fine print. That document worked only until he became disabled because of a couple of words in the document. And so she ended up in my office once he's disabled, having to go through the whole court process just to be able to pay the bills and take care of things in his name.
And that's so scary. Like you said, just a couple of words, like we've been talking about, can really mess up. And I don't want to say mess up, but for us, we don't maybe not understand those couple of words, but to the legal system, those couple of words can mean a big difference.
Right.
Now, you have just finished your book, and we're going to talk about this more in a few minutes. It's called Planning Your Legacy, A Guide to Preserving Your Personal and Financial Legacy, something I want to talk about more. We're talking Catherine Hammond, founder of Hammond Law Group. That's coming up on The Extra. It's now 9:24 on KRDO News Radio. Good morning and welcome back to The Extra. Today we are talking with Catherine Hammond, founder of Hammond Law Group. Firm focuses basically on estate planning, wills, trust, healthcare documents, power of attorneys, and a lot more. Very excited that you are here this morning, Catherine. And you are publishing a book. Is this your first book?
It is my first book.
It's very exciting. It's called Planning Your Legacy, a guide to preserving your personal and financial legacy. And as we were talking about in the first segment there, something people really cannot ignore at all. And is this kind of like a basic step-by-step or a step guide? Like, here's what you need to know.
So this book is trying to take all of the complicated legal information that I learned in law school and that I've learned through practicing over the last 20-some years and put it into plain English for people so that they can understand these concepts. We lawyers have held all of this information pretty close to our vests historically.
Right. We
like people to come in, they sit down in our office, we know everything, we tell them what they need to do and they do it.
Right.
That's been the typical way. I started on the other side of the table as a client whose family had a big fat mess. And so my passion really is for giving people the information so that you can make your own informed decisions about how you want things to go. So this is a plain English distillation of complicated information in a format that I hope is helpful. We have chapters on the basics of how a will works, what probate is, and then things like there's a chapter just for blended families.
Wow, yeah, because that
really
can get
common.
even more complicated, can't it?
Oh, my goodness,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
And with blended families, it's not uncommon for two people to get married and put everything into joint tenancy. And then when one of them dies, their children get completely disinherited.
Just because of a small little thing.
Small little thing.
Yeah.
They never realized that they needed a quote-unquote estate plan. People think estate planning is for people who have a lot of money.
That's just not true.
It's not.
And
all
as
of us are going to die.
We're all going to die. We all could become disabled. We could all become incapable of taking care of ourselves or communicating our wishes for the family. So estate planning is critical. Now, where can they get a hold of your book? Is it in stores now?
It's not in stores yet. It's not online. It's just in the release stage. And right now, the only place to get it is directly from us. And we're giving out a free copy to everybody who comes to one of our estate planning workshops.
And we have a couple of workshops that we really want to focus on coming up. And the first one is coming up is this March, beginning of March. And this is just, is this a basic estate planning workshop?
Yes. On Wednesday, March 1st and Saturday, March 4th, we have workshops here in Colorado Springs just going through the basics of how a will works, how a trust works, a lot of the issues that come up in families that people don't even realize are related to estate planning and don't realize could be problems when something happens to them. So we go through a case study to walk through the way that things really work and some ways to plan around the things that most people are worried about.
And like you said, don't have to be older to start planning your estate. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, by the time you're 18, you need to put something in place so your folks can just call and ask about it if you're okay, if you're in a medical emergency.
Right.
Okay, so exactly what times are these at and where are they located at the workshops?
So Wednesday, March 1st, we have a workshop at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and 6:30 in the evening. And Saturday, March 4th, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And you can get the details on locations for those on our website, which is coloradoestateplan.com, or you can call our office at 719-520-1474.
And again, this is just kind of a basic intro into estate planning. Now, what if somebody needs more specifics like long-term care planning or anything like that?
So long-term care planning is something that, again, everybody needs to be thinking through. If you are blessed to stay alive for a lot of years, it's possible that you're going to need some sort of help at some point. And so planning through what your housing options are and what are the financial options for how to pay for that is really, really important. I recommend that everybody talk to your financial advisor about that season of life and plan early. There are several different ways that you can do that. you can save up enough money so that you can afford the almost $90,000 a year in a nursing home if you end up going there.
That's a staggering number.
Right.
90,000.
Right. So some people are able to pay that.
Right.
And some people are not. And long-term care insurance is another way to handle that. And long-term care insurance is not inexpensive, but it's really, really helpful. So I recommend that people get an educated quote on exactly what their options are and whether or not long-term care insurance might be a benefit. Some people end up in a situation where they need some help, either in their home or in a nursing home, and they don't have enough money to pay for it and end up spending every last dollar down to the last $2,000 before Medicaid will kick in and help pay for that.
That's scary.
There's a lot that you can do before you're down to your last $2,000 to protect some of what you've worked hard for. So again, an estate planning attorney who does what we call Medicaid planning can help you navigate that and figure out how much can stay in your family and not have to go to the
And again, this is not just if you're single. This is if you're a married couple. You need to plan long-term care for both.
Exactly. And a lot of people think, well, if I get sick, let's say I have dementia, my spouse will just take care of me. And your spouse can have the best intentions in the world.
Right.
But that care, especially with something like dementia, becomes typically more than a spouse can handle physically or mentally or emotionally full time.
It's a lot, as you found with your mom, that's a very hard thing. Like you said in that case, dementia to handle. There's lots of parts and pieces that go with that, and they just can't communicate really what they want. Now, you do have a special workshop coming up on that as well for long-term care planning like we were just talking about. When is that?
So the workshops that we have coming up are just on the estate planning.
Okay.
So the wills and trusts, and then we touch on the long-term care planning within those.
Okay, perfect. And again, if they want more information or how do they get registered for the workshops?
They can call our office at 719-520-1474, or they can go online to our website at coloradoestateplan.com.
Okay, perfect. So again, you got 2 workshops coming up, March 1st and March 4th, and that's the basic workshop on estate planning.
And I just flew back into town and remembered we do have a long-term care panel discussion on March 7th. So you can go to our website or call our office about that one as well.
And they can get involved in the discussion where it's an open question answer kind of a thing like that.
Yes, and we'll have a panel of experts.
Speaking of questions and answers, we're going to open the phone lines right now. Give us a call, 473-1240. Catherine is going to take us your questions that has to do with estate planning. Maybe you have a will question, trust question, power of attorney question. Give us a call, 473-1240. We'll take your calls next. Coming up on the Extra. It's now 9:44 at KRDO News Radio. Good morning and welcome back to the Extra. It's 9:47. I'm Renee Roberts. Joining me, Catherine Hammond, founder of Hammond Law Group. We've been talking about estate planning and the little ins and outs people don't think about when planning estate. It just doesn't have to do with a will. Opening the phones to take your questions if you have a specific question for Catherine that has to do with estate planning, wills, power of attorneys, healthcare documents, trusts, stuff like that. Give us a call this morning, 473-1240. We do have Angelica on the phone. Good morning, Angelica.
Good morning.
And you have a question for Catherine this morning?
Yes, we have a disabled adult child, and we haven't been given any instruction from the time we got full custody of him. I had to figure out about guardianship. I had to figure out about everything. I had no guidance, really. So we're his guardians now, and we're worried about what happens when we're gone. How do we set up a trust so that he's cared for, to assign who's going to care for him? We don't want him in a group home or anything like that. We hear too many stories. We don't even know where to begin. How do we begin that?
Right. Hi, Angelica. I am sorry that you have been on this journey without a lot of guidance, and that's something that I hear quite often. there are a couple of issues that are important for you to be thinking through for if something happens to you. And I'm thrilled to hear that you're actually already thinking about them in terms of both who would take the quality of care of your son that you would want for him in your absence, and then also how would he be provided for financially.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that fits into the regular estate planning world, and it's a very personalized decision. And so sitting down with an attorney who can walk you through both of those two key areas, setting up guardianship, and it sounds like you have guardianship of your son right now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so it's possible to get that set up within your guardianship so that there is a successor if something happens to you and that person just is able to step in. It might be late to do that. It might be best. You can either go back to court and get that put in, or you can do that within your estate planning documents, and the court would need to be involved if you pass away. And then also on the financial side, you're correct that you'll need some sort of a trust to pass whatever financial resources you want to leave to him, so that those things don't disqualify him from any government benefits, but can be used to supplement SSI or Medicaid or any other need-based government assistance that he might be eligible for. So definitely sit down with an estate planning attorney, and the recommendations are going to be specific to your exact situation, the details of the kinds of things that you own, and what exact benefits your son is on in his situation. They can walk you through planning on a financial level as well as on that who's going to take care of him level.
Okay.
Was that helpful, Angelica?
Yes, that is helpful.
Okay.
And will any of that be covered in those workshops that you're having?
We touch briefly on that specific situation, and then we open it up for questions. If you have more questions that we don't cover during that section, we're happy to go deeper.
Okay.
Thank you, Angelica. Thank you so much for calling. You have a great morning, okay?
You too.
Thank you. Okay, so let's touch on those workshops again. It sounds like a lot of folks want to hear about the workshops, and this is again an estate planning workshop, a kind of a starter point. But like as you told Angelica, we will touch on some of the more in-depth stuff. And coming up March 1st, and another one on March 4th, and the times on both of those again.
So March 1st, which is a Wednesday, we have a workshop at 2:00 in the afternoon and 6:30 in the evening. And then Saturday morning, the 4th, it's at 10 o'clock.
Okay. And again, that's basic estate planning. But if you are also maybe looking more into, maybe you've started your estate planning, but you want to get into more long-term care plans, you have a workshop. This is a question-answer panel discussion coming up. So people can come and ask attorneys questions, right, about long-term planning. And that's coming up March 7th.
Correct.
And what time is that at?
So that one is going to be at our office. We have an education center that we built on the first floor of our office building on March 7th. And let me give you the exact time. That's going to take place at 3 o'clock.
Okay, 3 o'clock.
3 till
Perfect.
4:30.
And again, while we just have a couple minutes left, how do they get signed up for the workshops and get more information?
You can call our office at 719-520-1474 or go online to our website, coloradoestateplan.com.
Perfect. Catherine Hammond again. She's coming out with her book. It is you can contact your law firm to get a book, but it is going to hit bookshelves. Write this title down. It's Planning Your Legacy: Guide to Preserving Your Personal and Financial Legacy. Hopefully, for those of us that have been through it, it's a very eye-opening experience, but hopefully this also helps others realize I should have started doing this already. And to start making the steps to get it done. So again, they can contact you to get the book, right?
Absolutely.
And then
come to one of our workshops and you get a free copy.
Great. And it'll start rolling out in stores soon as well, right? Yes. Catherine Hammond, thank you so much for coming in. We will talk with you again next month. Looking forward to that. We'll probably jump more in depth into some of the estate planning, correct?
We'll look forward to it. We'll dive deeper.
I really enjoyed talking to you, Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. Thank you so much. It is now 9:54. You've been listening to The Extra, KRDO News Radio, 105.5 FM, 1240 AM.